I woke up to the gentle rocking of water. At first, I thought it was a dream. Sunlight filtered through the morning mist, sparkling across the lake like scattered diamonds. But dreams don't make your arms ache from the cold, or your fingers stiff from gripping the edge of a small boat. I blinked, the world around me was silent, too silent. The boat floated alone in the center of the lake. I glanced around, heart thudding. No sound of voices, no laughter from my parents, no teasing from my sister. The oars were gone. The shore was a distant blur. And then I noticed something else, a small, folded note resting against the seat in front of me. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The words were sharp, deliberate. You chose this. I didn't cry. I stared at the paper, trying to make sense of it. You chose this. How could I have chosen being left alone in the middle of a lake? My family vanished, the only company the lapping water and the whispering wind. Panic bubbled at the edges of my mind. I called out, "Mom's dad, Emma." Nothing, only the echo of my voice carried back to me, mocking me. I checked the boat again, paddles gone. Life jacket in place, but no way to steer. No radio, no phone signal. I tried my phone anyway. Dead, 0 bars. A cold knot of fear twisted in my stomach, but alongside it grew a sharp, strange clarity. My family hadn't just disappeared by accident. 9 hours earlier, we had been laughing. My parents had been arguing over the GPS. My sister teasing me for bringing too many snacks. We were just supposed to take a short family trip. A lazy day on the water. But now it felt like a trap I had unknowingly stepped into. Time blurred, my eyes scanned the horizon. A faint shape of trees on the far shore. Too far to swim. I tried to remember every safety rule, every emergency drill I had learned in Scouts. None of it mattered, this was real. And somehow, I had to survive it. I unfolded the note again, the handwriting. It wasn't my sister's childish scrawl. Not my mother's either, it was precise, deliberate, cold. You chose this. I sank to the bottom of the boat, pressing my forehead to my knees. I thought about calling my parents' names again, imagining their panic, but I didn't. Not yet, the thought of them calling lawyers later, in sheer panic, sent a shiver down my spine. 9 hours from now, they'd be in chaos, realizing they had underestimated me. I had to act fast. I scanned the boat and noticed a faint bulge under the seat. A small waterproof bag. Inside, a map, a compass, and a journal. The journal had one line writ in bold letters. Survive, discover, decide. I shivered, my pulse raced. This wasn't just abandonment, this was a test. And deep inside, a spark lit, a fire of determination I didn't know I possessed. They thought leaving me alone would break me. They had no idea it would make me unstoppable. I pushed the boat toward the faint current I noticed, clutching the journal and compass like a lifeline. Every paddleless push against the water reminded me I was alone, but I was not helpless. The lake seemed endless, but I refused to look back. I had to move forward, every ripple in the water, every caw of a distant bird, every whisper of wind felt like a countdown. 9 hours, they were all counting on me to fail. I wasn't going to. Not today. The lake stretched endlessly, a glassy mirror reflecting the early sun. My hands ached from gripping the edges of the small boat, my arms trembling from exhaustion. But I refused to look back. The shore was too far, too unreachable, and I didn't need to see it to know my family wasn't coming. I opened the journal again. The pages were filled with cryptic instructions, almost like someone had anticipated every thought I could have. Observe, adapt, move. The handwriting matched the note, precise, cold, calculated. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just abandonment. This was a plan. Someone had orchestrated my isolation. I scanned the horizon. A faint speck moved in the distance, another boat. Maybe a kayaker. My heart leapt. But the shape dissolved before I could focus. Time passed. Minutes blended into hours. My stomach growled. Sunlight bounced off the water, turning it blindingly white, making it impossible to see any landmarks clearly. And then I noticed the first clue. Under the seat, where the journal had been tucked, a small waterproof envelope. Inside, a single Polaroid photograph. It was taken from above, almost like a drone. My parents and sister, standing on the shore, waving, but their expressions weren't joyful. They were tense, eyes darting, lips pressed tight, and in the corner of the photo, a man I didn't recognize, holding a small black device. A camera, a GPS tracker. My pulse raced. Someone had been watching. I remembered the note again. You chose this. Was it a warning, a threat, or a dare? The hours dragged. I improvised ways to propel the boat forward, using my hands as paddles, rocking side to side, leaning into every current I could detect. Every movement made me more aware of the lake's strange silence. The occasional splash of fish, the distant calls of birds, but something felt wrong, too perfect, too controlled. Then came the second clue. A small, floating buoy, tethered loosely to a submerged anchor, bobbing gently near the boat. Inside a sealed envelope, I ripped it open. You are closer than you think. The choice is yours, panic or power. My heart raced. Whoever had left me here didn't just want me to struggle, they wanted me to think, to plan, to react, and I realized, with a cold clarity, that surviving this wasn't just about staying afloat. It was about understanding why I was put here in the first place. The third clue came unexpectedly. My phone buzzed. Weak signal, 1 bar, a text message. We are watching, don't fail. No number, no name, just the message. My mind spun. Who were they and why my family, my parents, my sister? And then I remembered something crucial. 9 hours. 9 hours was all I had before the chaos began back home. They would be calling lawyers, panicking, searching, demanding answers. I clenched my fists. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of fear. The lake wasn't just water, it was a test, a puzzle, and if I could survive it, I could see the truth. So I looked around, studied the patterns of the water, the slight winds, the floating debris. I remembered the scouts' lessons about currents and drift, improvised paddling, mental mapping, using the sun as a compass. Every stroke, every movement was a message. I am not helpless. I am aware. I am moving. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, glaring off the water. Sweat stung my eyes. But then, on the horizon, I noticed something unmistakable. Another boat. Small, fast, but approaching. Fear twisted into adrenaline. Whoever it was, they weren't friendly. And in that moment, I understood the truth. My family leaving me here wasn't the real danger. The real danger was the unseen force orchestrating everything, the silent, calculating presence who had chosen me for this game. And I was determined not to lose. The other boat closed in, slicing through the ripples like a predator. My heart thudded, but I forced myself to stay calm. Panic would drown me faster than the lake ever could. As it drew nearer, I could see him. Mid-30s, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Expression unreadable, no friendly wave. No recognition, just control. The kind of presence that makes your skin crawl without a word. He stopped a few meters away. The motor cut. Silence returned, heavier than ever. He didn't speak, he just watched. I swallowed hard. Who sent you? I shouted across the water. My voice cracked, but I forced it out. He tilted his head slightly, as if amused by the question. Then, finally, he spoke. The message was clear. You chose this. Now prove you can finish it. My stomach sank. He wasn't here to save me. He was here to observe, to test. I looked around the lake. No one else in sight. Nothing, just endless water, the horizon. And this stranger, who seemed to know everything about me. Then I noticed something strange. Tucked under the front of his boat, a black waterproof case, partially open, inside, what looked like a GPS tracker, identical to the one I had seen in the Polaroid. It hit me like ice. My family hadn't just left me. They were complicit, willingly or not, in whatever game was being played. I clenched my fists, fear twisted into anger, and anger into determination. You're going to tell me everything, I shouted. Now. He smiled faintly, cold, all in due time. Survive the lake, understand why you're here. Then the choice will be yours. Before I could respond, he revved the motor slightly and drifted away, gone as quickly as he appeared, leaving me with the echo of his words. I sat in the boat, trembling but focused. The journal lay open beside me. I reread the lines. Observe, adapt, move. They weren't just instructions, they were a code, a test. And the first piece of the puzzle was clear. Whoever had orchestrated this wanted me alive. Watching, learning, surviving. Hours passed, the sun climbed higher, and fatigue pressed on me like a weight. My mind raced through every memory, every small detail from the trip. My parents' odd glances the night before, my sister's quiet complaints about the GPS, every minor irritation, every small tension suddenly seemed like part of a pattern I had ignored. I remembered the Polaroid again, the man with the device, standing behind my family. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Someone was controlling everything, pulling strings I couldn't see, and they were testing me. But what was the purpose? Then I noticed a floating marker, red, barely visible in the water. I paddled toward it. Inside was a small tablet, turned on, video playing. My family, alive, safe mostly, but terrified, my parents' faces pale, my sister gripping a seatbelt. And in the corner of the screen, the same man holding up a finger, 9 hours, your choice, don't fail. I pressed my lips together. No tears, only a growing resolve. I realized then, the lake wasn't the danger. The game wasn't survival in water. The danger was in understanding the rules before it was too late. And I had 9 hours to play. By late afternoon, the sun had shifted high above the lake, glaring off the water in harsh sheets of light. My arms ached, my hands raw from paddling and gripping the edges of the boat. But I didn't stop. The journal, the Polaroid, the tablet, they all screamed the same truth. Someone had planned this meticulously. And the question now wasn't if I would survive, but why. I checked the tablet again. My family, still alive, still panicked, still being controlled. Each frame was a clue, each expression a message. My parents whispered urgently, glancing at something out of frame. My sister clutched the seat as if it could hold her in place. And the man, the stranger, watched like a predator, calm, calculating. A sudden realization hit me. The note, "You chose this." It wasn't a taunt, it was a key. I had unconsciously made choices in the hours leading up to this moment. Choices that someone had predicted. Choices that were being recorded. And now, the consequences were unfolding. I reached under the seat and found another envelope, waterproof like the last. Inside, a set of instructions in my own handwriting. Or at least they looked like it. Strange, familiar sentences I didn't remember writing. Lines like, "Go to the east marker, find the buoy with the red flag. Take the path they didn't expect, they will be watching." My pulse raced. Someone had anticipated every move. Was it my family? Or was someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes? I followed the instructions cautiously. The east marker was faint, a small floating pole tethered to a submerged rock. Near it, a rope tied to a package. I tugged it aboard. Inside, a waterproof bag containing a compass, another Polaroid, and a small GPS device. I realized what this meant. Whoever set this up wanted me to think, to solve puzzles, to prove something. And failing was not an option. Hours passed, the lake stretching endlessly. Silent but heavy, my stomach growled. My energy waned, but I refused to give in to despair. Then, the first real clue about my family emerged. On the GPS device, a blinking dot appeared on the screen. My parents' location. They were on a small island, not far from the lake's edge. The tablet video confirmed it. They were alive, scared, and waiting. It became clear, my family hadn't abandoned me. They had been coerced, manipulated into leaving me alone. The stranger, whoever he was, had orchestrated everything for reasons I couldn't yet comprehend. And then came the twist, another video notification. This one showed my parents speaking on the phone, not to lawyers, but to someone else, someone unknown. Their faces betrayed fear, uncertainty, and complicity. I clenched my fists. My family wasn't just victims, they were pawns. And the deeper I delved, the more dangerous this game became. By sunset, I realized one thing clearly. The lake was only the beginning. The real danger, the real mystery, was understanding who had orchestrated this, and why. I wasn't just paddling for survival anymore. I was paddling toward the truth. And the clock was ticking. 9 hours. By early evening, the wind had shifted, rippling the lake in unpredictable patterns. My arms screamed, my hands raw from hours of paddling. But I had a plan now. Every clue, every note, every tablet message had taught me one thing. Whoever orchestrated this underestimated me. I checked the GPS device again. My family's dot hadn't moved much. The stranger had left them tethered to the island, but that was a trap I could use. I studied the currents, the wind patterns, the boat's movement. I could reach them without being intercepted. The sun sank low, casting golden reflections across the water. And then I saw him again, the stranger. Same boat, same calm presence, drifting silently toward the island. He wasn't here to help. He was here to ensure the game continued, to watch me struggle, to see if I could survive both the lake and his manipulations. I gritted my teeth. "No more watching," I whispered. I remembered the journal's instructions. Observe, adapt, move. Every lesson I had learned over the past 9 hours came together. I would not just survive, I would turn the game around. I paddled steadily toward the island, using the currents to my advantage. Every stroke was precise. I kept low, using the boat's shadow to remain unseen. The stranger's gaze never left me, but he didn't anticipate the subtle patterns of the wind and water I had learned to exploit. When I reached the island, my family was waiting, tension visible on their faces. Their eyes widened as they saw me approach, not weak, not panicked, but calm, controlled, and determined. I climbed onto the shore, keeping my voice steady. It's okay, I understand now. But we're not going to be pawns anymore. The stranger's boat stopped a few meters away. He spoke, his voice deceptively calm. You've learned quickly, but the real test begins now. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out the GPS device he had planted in the package, showing him the exact positions of all the traps he had set. I know your patterns, I said. I know how you orchestrated everything. And I know you didn't account for one thing, me. He blinked just slightly, the first sign of surprise in hours. I turned to my family. Follow me. Every instruction he left, every misdirection, watch carefully. We're going to use it against him. The island wasn't large, but it offered cover. Using the stranger's own clues, we moved strategically, creating diversions, confusing his line of sight. He realized too late that he was no longer the observer, he was being watched. Hours passed, each movement calculated. By nightfall, we had regained control. The stranger, who had planned our panic and isolation, now faced uncertainty. He hesitated, then slowly backed away in his boat, watching as we organized ourselves, prepared and reclaimed what he had tried to take from us: autonomy, control, and the truth. My parents looked at me, shock and relief mingling in their expressions. How did you? My father began. I smiled quietly, almost to myself. 9 hours, that's all it took. They underestimated what we could do when we worked together. And in that moment, I understood something crucial. Survival wasn't just about staying afloat. It was about understanding the rules of the game, outsmarting the orchestrator, and reclaiming your own power. The lake was quiet now. The danger had not disappeared, but the balance had shifted, and I knew, deep inside, that we had turned the tables. Night had fully settled over the lake. The water reflected the moonlight, silver and deceptive, calm yet hiding depth. The stranger's boat was nowhere in sight, but the weight of his presence lingered. Whoever had orchestrated this, watched, manipulated, threatened, had underestimated not just me, but my family's resilience. We gathered on the shore, my parents, my sister, and I. Silence hung heavy, but it was no longer fear. It was understanding, clarity that came from surviving a carefully constructed nightmare. I handed my father the GPS device. Look at the logs, every single movement, every instruction, every fake panic. He left a trail, and it all proves how calculated this was. My mother gasped, staring at the data. Who would do this? I shook my head. Someone who wanted control. Someone who thought fear could replace respect and reason. But they didn't account for human will. Then my sister spoke, voice trembling but strong. Are we safe now? I smiled faintly. We're not just safe. We're untouchable. Anyone who tries to manipulate us again will face consequences. Hours later, back in the car, as we drove toward town, phones buzzed with notifications. Lawyers, panic-stricken, trying to reach us. Calls ignored, emails unanswered. But the evidence, the GPS logs, the video, the journal, was documented, ready to be used if needed. I glanced at the small note tucked in my jacket pocket. You chose this. I folded it neatly and placed it in the glove compartment. I hadn't cried, not for fear, not for isolation, not for betrayal. Because the truth was clear, we hadn't been abandoned. We had been tested, and we had passed. The real power wasn't in their planning, their traps or their threats. It was in our response, calculated, resilient, unbroken. By dawn, news started spreading. Mysterious disappearance of a family on a lake. A strange note, hours of isolation, and a final safe return with everything intact. Speculation ran wild. Was it an elaborate prank, a psychological experiment, or something more sinister? No one knew the full story, and that was how it should remain. I leaned back in the seat, my hand resting over my sister's shoulder. We chose survival, we chose each other. And that's the only choice that matters. The lake disappeared behind us, calm and quiet, but its lessons were indelibly etched into our minds. Vigilance, courage, and unity. And in the stillness, I realized something even deeper. They had thought leaving us alone would destroy us. It hadn't. It had created something stronger. Morning broke like a promise. The lake, once a battlefield of fear and manipulation, was calm, reflecting a sky brushed with gold and pink. My family and I stood together on the shore, exhausted, soaked, but victorious. We had survived isolation, fear, and the unknown orchestrator, who had planned every ripple of this ordeal. But survival was only the beginning. The real challenge was understanding what had been done, why, and how to ensure it never happened again. My father looked at the GPS device, now safely in my hands. I can't believe how detailed this is. Every move, every trick. His voice trailed off. He understood now the scale of the manipulation. My mother, still shaking, whispered, "They thought leaving us alone would, what, break us?" I shook my head, "Not just break us. They wanted to teach us something. Or maybe scare us. But fear doesn't control people who choose to fight." My sister, clutching a towel, finally spoke. "So, who did this? Who put us through this?" I hesitated. The answer was complicated. Someone close to us, perhaps. Someone with power. Someone who thought manipulation was stronger than trust. The orchestrator's identity remained hidden. But that was no longer important. We had the evidence. We had control. Over the next few hours, calls started flooding in. Friends, neighbors, even strangers who had seen the strange boat on the lake. Lawyers called frantically, but now it was our turn to dictate terms. I smiled faintly. 9 hours. I whispered, thinking back to the note. 9 hours was all it took for us to reclaim everything. We returned home, exhausted but unbroken. The ordeal had revealed something essential. The true strength of family isn't in avoiding danger, it's in facing it together. By evening, the story had gone viral. News reports covered the mysterious lake disappearance, the abandoned boat, the cryptic note. Speculation ran wild. Psychologists debated. Lawyers analyzed, but no one knew the truth. And that was perfect, because some truths don't need to be shared. Some victories are sweeter when they're ours alone. As night fell, I placed the note in a small box, sealing it away, a reminder of what had been endured, what had been learned. The lake had tested us. The orchestrator had failed, and we were stronger than ever. We had chosen survival. We had chosen each other. And no one, not strangers, not manipulators, not even fear itself, could take that away from us. For the first time in 9 hours, I finally allowed myself to relax. And somewhere deep inside, I knew. The lake was still calm, but we had changed forever. The night after the lake ordeal, the house was quiet, too quiet. For the first time in days, the ordeal had changed us all, my family and I. But the final piece of the puzzle still lingered, the orchestrator. Whoever had designed this game, whoever had thought fear and isolation could control us, needed to face consequences. I reviewed the GPS logs, the tablet footage, the journal, all the evidence meticulously collected over 9 hours. Every movement, every instruction, every threat had been recorded. My father, still pale from the shock, asked, do we involve the authorities? I nodded slowly. We do, but carefully, we decide the narrative. We drafted a detailed report, the sequence of events, the manipulations, the threats. Lawyers were involved, not just to protect us, but to ensure that the orchestrator could never use fear to manipulate another family. Days later, the news had taken a dramatic turn. Public speculation about the lake ordeal exploded online. Mysterious disappearances, cryptic notes, and a family's miraculous return. But only we and the authorities knew the truth. Then came the final confrontation. The orchestrator, realizing his plans had failed, reached out, not with threats, not with taunts, this time with compliance. We negotiated calmly, with lawyers present. Terms were clear, no further contact, full disclosure of all manipulations, and a legally binding guarantee that no family member could ever be endangered again. Finally, it was over. But the lake had taught me more than survival. It had shown me the strength of observation, the power of patience, and the importance of acting with precision. Fear could be wielded, yes, but intelligence and courage were stronger. My family gathered in the living room, exhausted but smiling. My sister leaned against me and whispered, "I'm glad you were the one who woke up in that boat." I smiled faintly. It wasn't just me, we did it together. The orchestrator, behind the legal settlements, he was powerless. He had miscalculated the one thing no manipulator can control, human will. And as the sun rose over our quiet town in the USA, I finally understood the truth. The lake hadn't broken us. It had forged us, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. We had chosen survival. We had chosen courage. And nothing, not threats, manipulation, or fear, could ever take that away. The ordeal was over, but the lesson remained etched into our souls forever. Power belongs to those who refuse to be controlled. Weeks had passed since the lake incident. The media frenzy had subsided, but the lessons remained vivid in our minds. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could after being trapped, tested, and manipulated in a lake with our lives in the balance. My family gathered around the kitchen table, laughing quietly for the first time in days. It was a different kind of laughter, one born from relief, strength, and the knowledge that we had survived something unimaginable. My parents still looked over their shoulders, Nervous, but their fear was no longer paralyzing. My sister, once timid and anxious, now carried a spark of confidence that hadn't existed before, and I had changed irrevocably. The GPS logs, journal entries, and tablet videos were stored securely. Lawyers had ensured that the orchestrator could no longer threat or manipulate anyone. But the real victory wasn't in legal action. It was in understanding our own strength. I walked to the lake one morning, calm and reflective. The water stretched endlessly, silver under the rising sun. I could feel its quiet power, its lessons lingering in every ripple. No more fear, no more manipulation, only clarity. My sister nudged me playfully. "Think we'll ever come back here?" I smiled, watching the sunlight glint across the water. "Maybe, but next time we'll come as a family on our own terms." And in that moment, I realized survival wasn't the end. It was a beginning of strength, courage, and control over our own lives. We had been tested, threatened, and isolated, but we emerged unbroken. And that truth, that feeling, was something no one could ever take away. The lake had been a trap, but it had also been a teacher, and we had learned its lessons well. The morning after our return felt surreal. The lake behind us shimmered in the sunrise, calm as if nothing had happened. Yet we knew differently. 9 hours alone, a mysterious orchestrator, cryptic notes, and life-threatening isolation. Those memories were still raw. But the fear had been replaced by something stronger: empowerment. We gathered in the living room, sunlight streaming in through the windows. My parents, once shaken to their core, were now resolute. My sister, younger than her years but wiser now, looked at me with awe and trust. I opened the journal one last time. The cryptic lines, the instructions, the challenges, they weren't just tests. They were lessons in courage, observation, intelligence, and unity. I realized something crucial. The orchestrator didn't understand one fundamental truth. Fear can manipulate, threats can intimidate, isolation can confuse. But none of it can control people who choose to act with clarity, resilience, and purpose. We had not only survived, we had gained control. We had reclaimed power over our lives. Weeks later, the orchestrator reached out one final time, realizing his manipulation had failed. But we didn't respond. Silence was our answer. Evidence, the law, and our unity were stronger than any threats he could make. And as I watched my family laugh quietly at breakfast, I knew we had passed the ultimate test. We had endured the impossible, outsmarted the manipulator, and emerged not broken, but stronger, smarter, and unshakable. The lake had taken nothing from us. On the contrary, it had given us clarity, courage, and the ultimate lesson: survival was not enough. The real victory was in taking back control of your own life, refusing to be manipulated, and protecting those you love. I tucked the final note into a safe place, a reminder not of fear, but of triumph. And somewhere, far across the lake, the orchestrator's plans had unraveled. He had misjudged the one thing he could never predict: the human will to survive and to fight back stronger than ever. The lake was calm, but we were unstoppable.